Welcome to another episode of the Saturday Morning Snap Fantasy Football Podcast, the show that brings you weekly advice and news at the beginning of every weekend. Introducing first your hosts, Mac, Mark, and Landon. Welcome back to the Saturday Morning Snap Fantasy Football Podcast. We are live on Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, or however you may be listening. If you're new to the show, welcome in. We're glad to have you, and if you've been listening for a while, leave us a review. We'd love to hear from you. If you're a new listener, then go on and click that subscribe button if you like what you're hearing. It is episode 42, and today we're talking potential values in 2019. I'm your host, Mac, and I'm joined by my two lovely colleagues, co-hosts, Landon and Mark. What's up, boys?
I'm just getting psyched for this NFL fantasy season. I went through a little bit of a slump. I was getting tired of dedicating my whole life to fantasy football, but it's now the end of February, and we are. I'm getting pumped up again. I'm getting ready.
It's funny. You just need like a week or two to let it all go, and then it's game time.
That's it. How you doing, Marky?
I'm great. I was at work today and getting a little bit rattled because my phone was just going nuts in my pocket. And then I just realized it was a bunch of sleeper updates. So I was pretty pumped to read all the news. And yeah, I'd have been really mad if it was my girlfriend texting me, but it was just the NFL. Thank goodness.
I got a nice little notification from ESPN last week. I don't know if you boys saw. I shared it to the Instagram, which is at Saturday Morning Snap, if you haven't already been checking us out. But I got an ESPN notification about potential offers for Le'Veon Bell, and one of them happened to be the Green Bay Packers, 4 years, $60 million, all guaranteed. What do you boys think about that prospect?
Dynasty stocks of Aaron Jones would just go down the drain.
Yeah, she gone.
I think it's neat to finally see some numbers out there in the field for him. I think that's a pretty sound first one. I don't think it's going to be the last one, but it's neat now that you can actually kind of associate some offers to what you actually think a player like that is worth. You know, we haven't seen him in play in so long.
These are like hush-hush offers because technically it would be...
not until March 21st, I think.
11th, isn't it?
11th? Okay, yeah.
Yeah. Either way, I guess the tampering hour starts on the 11th, but whatever you want to call it.
Packers just know that Lev is all over social media. So if they just put it out on the internet, on the social hemisphere, he'll find it.
Oh, he's having a blast. He's like putting out polls like, who should I go to?
Oh, man, it's a crazy world we live in.
Yeah. So listen, we're talking values today. And, before we move into that, everyone kind of classifies a value maybe a little bit differently. So why don't you two go on and talk about how you perceive a value in a fantasy football draft?
I'll start us off. I mean, there's a lot of differences that people perceive a value. And for me, it's fairly simple. Is if I'm looking late in the drafts. I'm looking if this guy is drafted in the over 7th or 8th round, and he's a starter on your fantasy team by week, 6 or so. If you're starting him week to week, that is returning value. Maybe even they help you on your bye week. Maybe that's the value you need. When your stud goes down on his bye, and this guy steps in, and like an Austin Eckler type, or guy that just, he's not a superstar. He's not a breakout. He's definitely not a bust. He's going to return value for your team and give you that maybe week-to-week value.
Mm-hmm. So you're looking for more like the long shot player that could turn into a starter.
I'm going long shot okay. On my generally on my values.
Or even
Mark, what do you think?
To add on to that, I agree with the way Landon described that, but I also think it's worth thinking about players that maybe were hyped up last year and then got injured, and maybe they're in their sophomore season now and are coming back for what is going to be their first look at NFL football. Maybe the hype has slowed down on them, but that's the type of player that you can get a great value on.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that. I mean, Leonard Fournette is going into this season a perfect example of that. You had to pay first round capital to get him last year. He disappointed you, and now we're seeing him go at the back of the second, in the way too early ADP average draft position rankings for 2019. Okay. So that's like Mark said, that's a good way to think about it too. Guys that maybe got injured or struggled and they've sort of fallen off the public perception. But for me, a value is just somebody that's going to return more to you than you invest in them to get them on your team, essentially. And you can view it a couple different ways. Like Landon said, guys not really known about, and you're sort of taking a gamble on him, or you know what the player can do, but there is a hesitation on drafting the player because of other circumstances like an injury or a usage in the offense, like a David Johnson type guy. So that's kind of what we're sort of talking about today.
And these guys, if you look back on 2018, we're not talking about waiver wire ads like a Gus Edwards you added late. These are drafted guys that you drafted. And I want to ask both of you, who were values on your 2018 teams? Personally, if you had very many that stood out, maybe they weren't the best value of 2018, but if you think about your fantasy teams, maybe you have 1 or 5, or doesn't matter. Who's your best value that you had that you can think of off the top of your head?
It was Tyler Boyd for me.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. He was a stud value.
Yeah, he's if I hadn't traded him, which I can't remember what the trade was for, but I know that I packaged him for...
You got Mixon out of the deal.
Yes, that's right. I put him in the deal with Mixon. So that was a great trade-up for me. Mixon was actually my running back 3. Who'd I have? McCaffrey, Kamara, and Mixon. So Mixon was that sort of piece that put me over the top. But Tyler Boyd allowed me to sort of 2 for 1. It was Julian Edelman and Tyler Boyd for Joe Mixon. Yeah.
Right.
So, Tyler Boyd was great for me. And Mark, had I kept him, I could have had him as like great keeper value this year, but
sure.
Oh well.
But you wanted a stud running back. It made sense.
Yeah.
Mark, who on your teams were a value?
Well, I won't get too far into specifics on the players, but I really liked Mike Williams' performance last year. Really got him really late. And who else? Maybe like Mitch Trubisky. Like, I don't think there's any reason that guy should ever be on a waiver wire. Like, he's a great player to have on the bench anyway. And last year he showed out, and that's an offense that's getting stronger.
You know who was a value, oddly for me anyways, late first round, early second round guy was Melvin Gordon. You know, he just felt to me like a running back 1. He was right up there with the Zeke Elliott's and the Todd Gurley's, even though he was a late first, early second round guy last year. Yeah, he showed out. He returned value, I guess, until playoffs hit.
Yeah.
I see the exact same thing that you do, Landon, and like now this year, Melvin Gordon's finally going to go where he probably should be going, right? Yeah. Like, you're not going to get that half a round discount on Melvin Gordon anymore. It's like he's a top 5 running back.
Yeah,
he's
Melvin
here.
Gordon is not.
People are paying that price. No.
Make sure everyone, you guys tweet us or follow us on Instagram. Tweet us your values in 2018. Tweet us who you think is going to be a big value in 2019. Some guys that stood out: Emmanuel Sanders, James White, Tyler Lockett was a great value. George Kittle. Our Instagram is at the Saturday Morning Snap. I am on Twitter at Landon_SMS. Mark is at MarkDraft_SMS, and our main account at SMS Fantasy.
Perfect. So let's just go through. We'll do sort of like a snake style type, not a draft, but we'll kind of go through in that order, and we'll talk about some potential values. I know we're, at the end of February here, and or beginning of March, I should say, and it's a lot. It's a long time away for fantasy football, but we do have some guys in mind with current ADP that could be values down the road. So. Linda, why don't you kick it off with one of your picks here? We'll do like a 4-round sort of draft of values, and we'll go through that way.
Sounds good. My value, it stood out significantly, is Gus Edwards. He's going mid 11th round. He's the starting running back for the Baltimore Ravens, and they came out today and said that he is their number one. So there's no reason why he should be going in that late in drafts. I think he's more of a round 5 or 6 guy at that point. They're a run first team. We all know Lamar Jackson can't throw the ball very well, so he's going to be involved if he stays that way. Now I know there's rumors concerning free agents, but as it stands now, Gus Edwards is an absolute steal of a deal. He's an easy running back 2 or 3. Week to week.
Well, the one thing that
he's only 23. He's only 23.
The one thing I loved about Gus Edwards when JJ Zachariason came out with that, remember that running back list that I shared with you? All the running backs in the league that had 100 carries or more, and it was broken up by percentages of 10-yard gains, 20-yard gains, a loss of yardage, and between 0 and 2, like what percentage of the carries.
Yep.
Gus Edwards was the league leader in rushes for a loss. Only 7% of his carries were for a loss. And to put that into context, the next closest guy was 13%, so almost double. And he was the only guy in single digits. So like just the safety, the floor that he offers is tremendous.
Absolutely. All right, Mac, you're next.
I'm going to go with a guy that I've talked about before. He's currently the running back 20 off the board, going at the 505, fifth pick of the 5th round. That's Kerryon Johnson from the Detroit Lions, running back. He was a rookie last year, ended the season. I guess he had a little bit of momentum, but caught an injury, a minor one at that. But I think that's maybe why people are a little bit down on him and where his stock right now is so low. But just to put it into context, Kerryon Johnson, under their new offensive coordinator, Darrell Bevell, he said that he's really excited to have Kerryon Johnson be the feature piece of the offense. He's really interested in getting him involved in the passing game because he's heard a lot of good things about Kerryon Johnson and his ability to pass catch. And if you look near the end of his season, he basically became the starter, the feature role, week 3. Last game was week 11. He was averaging about 18 touches per game, so that's rushing attempts and passes. But Kerryon Johnson in that stretch was the 12th ranked running back from weeks 3 to 11. So a fringe RB1/2. The 20th guy off the board, you're basically getting Kerryon Johnson as your running back 3. Probably way better than a flex piece, but even then, I think having him as your RB3 could be like tremendously valuable in 2019 because I think he's really only going to get more involved. So if he gets the ball more, sky's the limit for this guy.
For sure. I mean, and that's not a giant value, but I do agree that he's probably around too late going there.
That's what I think.
I have him bunched in with the Aaron Jones, Darius Geis, Derrick Henrys and Devonta Freemans. I think he should be at least going with those guys.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at the running backs going ahead of him, we've got Sony Michel, who's part of a three-back system, so you just never know where you're getting there. Marlon Mack, Derrick Henry, Darius Geis, who we haven't even seen yet, Aaron Jones. If Le'Veon Bell goes there, it's going to change. Devonta Freeman coming off an injury. I think that I would rather have Kerryon over most of those guys. I might be biased, but that's my take.
Cool.
That's a good take, though, because a value is a value. It doesn't necessarily have to be a jump of, 5 rounds and this guy's projected value for the following season. Like, you're right. No, to see him at the 505 position is late. Mm-hmm. So that's an expert take.
Bang.
If I can take this here, I'm gonna go with Mike Williams, a guy whose name I've already mentioned this episode. He just had a great season last year, and when Keenan Allen would fail to get owners their points, Mike Williams was often the guy getting them, and especially in that amazing game they had against the Chiefs, he was the big hero of the game. But Mike Williams was just consistent. I think 904 is where he's going now. I think he could probably be a little more valuable than that this year, even coming off a 10 touchdown season. I think 904 is late for a guy like Mike Williams in a team where Phillip Rivers really looks better than ever to me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I like that. Tyrell Williams also leaving in free agency, it looks like. So that just gives him more opportunity to get that, solidify that number 2, maybe 1B role in that LA offense.
Yeah. Tyrell could land on his feet somewhere good too. He had some really shiny moments last year.
He might be a value too. Usually if he wasn't that number 1 guy in that offense, like he wasn't in LA, he could definitely be a value. I agree. So Mark, go ahead. You can go next as well.
Double up.
Okay. So I'll take this guy who's apparently undrafted. I think he should be held in a little higher esteem than that, even though last year wasn't necessarily his any kind of platform for him to get the ball. But Ito Smith from Atlanta, he is the RB2 when Coleman leaves that team. He'll be the RB2 behind Devontae Freeman, who is notoriously hurt. So if he does get hurt again, and even if he doesn't, I think Ito Smith is destined to get the ball maybe 10 times a game, I would guess. And I think you could get him at an absolute value if he does have some kind of role to play in that offense.
I think it's only a matter of time for him.
I like it.
Yeah. Especially if Tevin Coleman takes off, gets an offer from another team, heads elsewhere. Like, it's just going to be him and Devonta Freeman. So you've seen what Tevin Coleman can do as the 1B. But if Devonta Freeman goes down, which is always a possibility, then I think Tevin Coleman could be like that next level handcuff next year.
Well, Ito Smith. Devonta Freeman is a player that, he's a bit of a role player in that he's a power runner, and he's not the same player as Tevin Coleman was, but you could see how Atlanta really did capitalize on having an assortment of backs, right? And they did rely on that RB2.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they're not just going to switch their ways. Hopefully they have something in Ito Smith. I was a fan of Ito. I wish he showed a little bit more this past year.
Yeah.
All right, back to you, Mac.
Yeah, I guess coming to me. So I'm going to talk about a guy here who, depending on what happens in Kansas City, I don't think that he'll stay here. But at currently 5th pick of the 7th round, Damien Williams. He looks right now to be the number 1 in Kansas City. Now, there's been talk about Mark Ingram potentially going to Kansas City or them making a move for somebody else. But Damien Williams, if he were to be drafted in the 7th round, I think he would return tremendous value. I mean, you saw what he did in the fantasy playoffs, in the playoff run for Kansas City. I just think there's no possible chance he stays in the 7th round. But if you happen to get him there, tremendous value. I think the odds of him staying in the 7th round are about 10%.
Yeah, I agree.
And the only way he's going to be in the 7th or 8th round is if he's a backup.
If Mark Ingram goes to Kansas City.
Oh, and if Mark Ingram goes to Kansas City, then I'm out on Damien Williams. But I'm just saying, right now, him being the starting running back. I mean, in a draft, you don't get starting running backs in the 7th round. It just doesn't happen. You had sort of alluded to the fact, Landon, that if Damien Williams was the starter in Kansas City, he'd go in probably the 3rd. Would be safe to say.
Yeah, for sure. Like right around that Dalvin Cook range-ish, late 3rd.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, there's just not too many guys past him that are starters. The next guy after Damien Williams is Austin Eckler, backup running back to Melvin Gordon. So, just not too many starters left.
Definitely. So I'm going to go with a wide receiver now. I'm going to go with Robbie Anderson for a few different reasons. One, he was he showed spurts of greatness in 2018. He had 200-yard games. He had that one game against Denver. He had 2 touchdowns, which was phenomenal. He did disappear a lot, though. But I think that's a product of that team, that offense, and Sam Darnold trying to come into his own. So I think Sam Darnold's going to take a step up. I think the offense is going to take a step up. Potentially, if they land a guy like Lev Bell, that just makes the offense more dynamic and really just get more first downs, which will in turn help Robbie Anderson. So he is going, let me see here, in the 10th round, mid-10th round. I think he's being undervalued by a couple rounds, maybe 2 or 3 rounds there. I see him more in that right behind, maybe 8th round, I think, is where he should be drafted before Calvin Ridley. I'll just say, in my opinion, and that's I think he's going to be a value if he stays that late, and he might. That draft price might not move.
What's the most you would pay for Robbie Anderson?
The most I would pay. So, based on this, I would take. So in the 6th round, I'm looking at Tyler Boyd. I like more, right around maybe just after. I like Edelman and Marvin Jones a little bit more. So they're in the 7th round. They might be values there too. So right after Marvin Jones, maybe I would say.
Yeah, I think the only downside with Robbie is that people are worried about his personal life and that impeding on his career, but. It's a fair assessment, but hopefully you don't see it again. It's his 2nd run-in with the law now, which has led to multiple suspensions. I hope that is the last for him in terms of whatever he's doing outside of football.
Definitely. And if we get even a whisper of that in the offseason, I'll be hands off. I'm not about that life.
Yeah.
So next I'm going to go with a quarterback, and we subscribe to late quarterbacks on this podcast, and I'm looking at the 12th round and see what kind of value a quarterback can provide me, and I am looking at Jameis Winston. I think that offense is with Bruce Arians is going to thrive. I think they've got some really good receivers in Chris Godwin and Mike Evans. If they get a pass catcher, I mean they're still in the Le'Veon Bell sweepstakes. You never know; it might surprise us. Maybe Ronald Jones decides to catch some balls and show off his speed. You just never know. And but even if a running back doesn't go there, I still think they're going to be a high-powered offense. O.J. Howard is an absolute beast and a stud. They're going to throw it a ton. I think I don't think it's going to be the roulette of is Fitzpatrick or Winston. I think they're going to stick with Winston all season long. And if that's the case, he is going to definitely return value in the 12th round.
100%. Like, without a doubt.
Yeah.
I'm going to follow suit with the quarterback value because we about that.
Well, especially, hold on, before I say, Pat Mahomes is going in the 2nd round.
Correct.
Just for perspective. And okay, go ahead, Mac.
Well, yeah, we talked about the difference between, I think I used Aaron Rodgers on the last podcast as like the example, but last year, the difference between Aaron Rodgers as the second quarterback off the board in the beginning of the third round and Drew Brees in the back of the eighth, it was only 11 points.
Yeah.
So, yeah, Pat Mahomes was otherworldly this year. The difference between him and Rodgers was like 80 points. But quarterbacks return value later in drafts. So that's the main point here. Whereas running back ones versus running back threes, it's another world, right? So that's kind of why we stick to the late round QB. But I'm going with Jimmy Garoppolo at 1206. So just after Jameis. For the record, I would be super happy with either of these guys next year. I'm with Landon. I'm high on Jameis Winston as well. With Bruce Arians coming in, I have faith in him to get the offense going. But Jimmy G, similar situation. Jerick McKinnon coming back. The prospect of Antonio Brown being in town is fantastic. George Kittle, probably the top 3 tight end in football behind Ertz and Kelsey. I would put him ahead of Gronk for next year, 100%, even if he's playing. And then Kyle Shanahan just orchestrating the offense, the puppet master, we'll call him. I really, really like San Francisco's chances of having a successful season. And especially if you can get a guy like Dante Pettis going too in year 2, I think sky's the limit for Jimmy G and the 49ers. So I'm going to go with Jimmy
Antonio
G.
Brown?
Yeah. Yeah, that'd be amazing.
I am going to stay in the Golden State of California and talk about a guy named CJ Anderson.
CJ? Mr.
You think he's going to stay?
CJ, yeah, the bowling ball shaped pillar of the LA Rams backfield. So obviously, Rams couldn't have made the Super Bowl without him. Todd Gurley had a knee injury, which, I mean, it's hopefully going to be cleared up by next season. But I think in a couple of weeks, CJ Anderson's contract is going to be up. But frankly, I predict him staying with the LA Rams, and I think he's going to be involved on like third and shorts. I think he's going to get a lot of goal line carries. I think 13-12 is really late for someone who had such a strong performance on a team that clearly has an amazing offensive coach and fantastic players around him. I think you can lose by taking CJ Anderson at the 13-12 position. I think that's ludicrous.
Yeah.
Have you heard the talk about CJ Anderson potentially being the Mark Ingram replacement if Mark Ingram decides to leave town?
Oh, in New Orleans.
In New Orleans.
I wouldn't hate that either.
Bruiser back, they can catch the football.
Nothing changes really as far as his value. I think that kind of it's kind of a really similar boat, I guess, whether he's on LA or New Orleans in that role. Even though Gurley is a different RB1 than Kamara. But I think to share the ball between a power back and a speed back is a crucial way to succeed in this NFL.
Okay.
I like that.
Well put.
Okay.
Mackie, who you got next?
Is it back to me?
No, I think we're gonna keep going the snake. That would be mine.
Sorry. Yeah. Sorry about that.
So at the 1206 position, we're looking at Golden Tate. I think.
I like that.
I think he has a solid upside no matter where he is next year. I think if he remains a Philadelphia Eagle, then he's their best receiver aside from Zach Ertz. He's a really solid player. But I even heard maybe he could end up somewhere like the Patriots. I think that might be a great look for him. He's a solid player, and at the 1206 position, I think that's late for Golden Tate. What about you guys?
I think it's just downright disrespectful. I think he was misused in Detroit. I mean, if you look at, or sorry, not in Detroit, in Philadelphia, I think there was just too many mouths to feed. But if you look back to what his role was as a 1/2 option in Detroit, he was fantastic for fantasy and just kind of went to an offense that struggled with the health of their quarterback and, different quarterbacks, different relationships, different chemistries. Golden Tate just got overlooked, and I think that won't be the case if he stays, but if he leaves, could be great in the New England system. He's a high possession guy, much like a Julian Edelman, so it'd be interesting to see what happened. But at 12, at the 12th round, you're really investing no draft capital to get him, so you might as well take a shot, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
That's what I think.
That's a value. He's a value.
That's a value. It's a value, baby. I'm going to go with a value at the tight end position. Now, this is kind of what Mark was saying, that maybe a little bit forgotten about Hunter Henry, middle of the 11th round. Definitely has top 5 upside as a tight end. He's young, plays in a really solid offense. Phillip Rivers loves throwing Hunter Henry the ball. He's a big target, good hands. With how many times the LA Chargers are going to be in the red zone, good red zone presence. I think, again, at 11, I like to take a tight end late. I'm certainly not going to pay like 2nd round, 3rd round for Travis Kelce or Zach Ertz or even George Kittle. It's just too steep of a price for me. But I think a guy like Hunter Henry could, at the 11th round, middle of the 11th round, could be an awesome value and could have top 5 upside at the tight end position. Because let's just face it, the tight end position is a muddy, dirty, gross place with a lot of uncertainty. But when you get a guy like Hunter Henry coming back and healthy, I think the 11th round is completely safe.
Yeah, I think he's. It's neat that you did throw a tight end into the talk here, because we talk about the tight end position like such a dice roll, right? And that's really the reality of the position year round. It's always tricky to determine who you're going to start in that position week in, week out. So interesting hat tip to Hunter Henry there. I did almost
Hunter Henry,
forget him, I'll admit.
I know. Well, him at that position too, he's not a plug and play, right? He's not that every week starter necessarily, but I think you could start him in a handful of really, really good matchups and be quite fine, depending on the season he's having. But I would probably stream in guys, but he would definitely be my sort of centerpiece at the tight end position. I'd probably play him at least 50% of the weeks.
Sounds good. So for my last value, I'm going to go deep again. I'm going to go to Kiki QT in Houston. I think I really liked I know he had some hamstring injuries, and it kind of stopped him from really breaking out as a rookie. But from what I saw, I really liked it. And I'm not sure what the returner Will Fuller is going to be to that offense. I'm going to keep that monitored. But I really liked what I saw, and I love QT. He's going in the 13th round, and I think as a sophomore receiver, I think he will show that he has some serious upside. He's kind of a late round dart throw. He's a guy like Dante Pettis too. Both guys are going to be values. They're going right around that same spot, and like a Cortland Sutton. Those guys I love, and I could go on. I could say Antonio Callaway. All these late round rookie receivers that didn't quite break out. I love taking them. You might as well throw a dart at them, and if they hit, they'll hit really hard and they'll break out. And then you get them as not only are they a value for this year, they're going to be a really great keeper option if you are in those kind of leagues. And that's really what we want. We don't want to get those super safe options. A Jack Doyle, we know who Jack Doyle is. The Kyle Rudolph, we know who he is. They're going right around that same area. You might as well take a flyer on have an upside wide receiver, and I think all those guys are going to return value in their sophomore seasons.
And if a guy like QT doesn't pick up where he left off, or he doesn't hit, then you can cut him without any remorse, right? Like, you can move on. He was your 13th overall selection in a draft. There's probably guys on the waiver wire that you might want to take a chance on. I would feel no reservation in cutting Kiki QT. I would just say, okay, I gave you 3 weeks. It didn't work out. See you later.
Yep. Yeah. See ya.
See ya.
All right, that's it for the values. What else we got, fellas?
Well, I'm gonna hit you boys with a little curveball here, a little would you rather to take off, keep it light and fun to end. But in a would you rather situation, and you had to choose one, you have the ability to run at 100 miles an hour or fly at 10. Go.
Run at 100 miles an hour or fly at 10 miles an hour.
So
correct.
We're allowed to ask questions, right?
Of course.
Absolutely.
You got to be specific here.
Okay, so does
I know that you guys are going to be looking for circumvention.
The same demand for energy and fuel when you're running 100 miles an hour than it would in like an average day of my walking speed at like 0.4 miles an hour or however fast it is I walk?
You are essentially like Dash from The Incredibles. You can just turn it up whenever.
Okay, so
it's a light jog.
Okay, I don't have to change my diet for either of these activities, flying or
Negative.
running. Okay.
No, you just, when you need to metabolize that energy, you just bang, gone.
You know what? I already run at like 90 miles an hour at full speed, so I'm gonna have to go with flying.
Okay, Lando.
Flying is the clear champion. Like it's obvious. You got every person dreams of flying. You look at
Not at 10 mph though.
What's that?
Not at 10 miles an hour though. That's embarrassing.
Oh, please, Mac. Flying at 10 miles an hour, your dreams would come true. It would be so majestic, and you could go anywhere you want. It would take a little more time, but explain how you're gonna run across like the English Channel if you want to go for like.
Well, at 100 miles an hour, you could run across the water. Like you could just gone.
Is that how you think running works? How much do you weigh?
100 miles an hour, you would be peeling. You're just going to tread across the water.
Flew up really high and you had like some gliders on, a paraglider on, and then you could just coast across the ocean.
Landon, do you adopt this knowledge that flying would be the clear, obvious choice?
No, I'm gonna go with the other way. I'm gonna be Mr. Contrary here. I'm gonna go run. I will. I'll take my time traveling across continents, but I will be able to travel North America plenty fast for my liking, and I don't need to bring anyone. I'll just go by myself.
Fair.
Well, one thing you'll never be able to run away from, though, is your past, Landon.
Story of my life, Marky.
How about you, Mac?
I'm
tiebreaker.
Yeah, Mac be the tiebreaker.
Yeah, well, I'm going to be a sellout, and I would love to fly, so I'm going to fly.
You would.
I think it is the clear, obvious choice. I mean, I'm not shocked that Landon wants to be devil's advocate here. So,
I like to do that.
I know. You just couldn't resist.
No.
I would love to fly. It'd be great. I don't care what speed. I would just afloat. I'd be fine. So I'm gonna go with flying.
All right.
Or you could pick options A and B together and just be Randy Moss.
He is retired on a unicorn. Yeah.
Tyreek Hill.
All right,
well, this is our little mini series of short, quick episodes. Next week we're gonna give you guys our breakouts, our 2019 breakouts, and I'm excited for it.
Breakouts, bust, values, it's all coming to you.
Yeah, some rookie. I can't wait to talk about the combine coming up.
Mm-hmm.
We probably missed a lot of great values on this episode, so really, holler at us. Let us know what your thoughts are.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And just that one more time, a friendly reminder, jump over to wherever you listen and leave us a rating and a review.
We're desperate.
Yeah. Our goal here is just to provide you guys with a really fun listening experience. So your feedback is important to us in our process and sort of the future of this podcast. So go over there, leave us a review or tweet us or leave us a comment on Instagram. We would love to hear from you. All right, boys. We'll see you next time.
All right.
See ya.
Bye. Thanks for listening to another episode of the Saturday Morning Snap Fantasy Football Podcast. Follow us on Twitter at SMS_fantasy. Support this independent podcast at patreon.com/SaturdayMorningSnap.